Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hi, my name is Carolyn. And in this video, I'm going to be showing you all of my eyeshadow palettes and doing a small declutter. I'm just going to be showing them one by one and deciding whether or not I want to keep them. So if that sounds interesting to you, then just keep on watching. I did want to mention a couple things before we get started. I don't have a Poshmark or Mercari, so the palettes that I'm passing on, I'm going to be passing on to friends and family. And another thing is, I'm sorry if you're not new here and you've heard this a million times, but I enjoy collecting palettes with special packaging. So just keep that in mind. Like I don't plan on decluttering palettes that have kind of like collector's packaging. Like the ColourPop collab palettes and things like that. So yeah, I just enjoy collecting eyeshadow palettes. It's they're the only thing that I collect. Like I don't collect figurines or anything like that. So anyway, just bear that in mind. But that's it. So without further ado, let's just get started. So first I have this palette from Chic Lam. It's in Virtuous Virgo. I did get it from the packaging, but it's not one I feel like I need to hold on to for the packaging. I got it because I'm a Virgo, and somebody else was talking about it in one of their videos, and I don't remember who it was, but I know it was just an impulse purchase that I regretted. This is what the inside looks like. There was a pressed glitter here, and I took it out. I was trying to do some like frankening where I mixed shadows together. That didn't work out. But anyway, the color story, I like the color story. The formula is not great though, in my opinion. And I'm not going to buy any more makeup from this brand, Chic Lam, because they're kind of like a fast makeup, and so it's just poor quality. So yeah, I am going to be decluttering this one, and actually, I'm going to give it to my husband. My husband's been asking me for some eyeshadows that I don't want because he wants to use them for paint. So this one I will be giving to him. I guess that you can make paint out of eyeshadow. And also, Christine Ann has a video on her channel about making artwork out of eyeshadow pigments. You can use like old eyeshadows or eyeshadows you don't want in art projects. So yeah, anyway, if you're at all interested in that, I will have it linked below. But anyway, this is going to my husband for paint. Next I have my Melt Mary Jane palette. This was sent to me by Dub's Beauty Diary. She tried it and didn't like it, so she passed it along to me, which I'm super grateful for because it started my love for Melt. And so this was the first melt palette I got, and I did really enjoy it. I first of all really love this color story. These two shimmers are pretty crumbly, but I don't mind them. There is a lot of fallout, and you really need to do your eyeshadow first when you use this palette, but I always do that, so it's not a problem for me. And I also have to like double prime my eyelids, and where I put my Volani eyeshadow primer on, and then I let that sit, and then I put my Ulta Beauty primer on, and I set that with powder. And I also use NYX glitter glue or NYX glitter primer, and that seems to work really well for this palette. There's no creasing or anything, and these shadows last all day. I really like the matte formula of my melt palettes of this palette. So and then these shimmers work really well. Like there's no they're not crumbly or anything. So yes, thank you again, DW, for sending this to me because I really enjoy it. And then next I have my 420 palette, which I got on their Black Friday deal. After I got the Mary Jane one. I really wanted to try more melt, and I still want to try more melt palettes. The thing I don't like about this palette is this thing is ripping. And you can see my face there. But anyway, this is coming off, which is kind of annoying. But the shadows, I've only used this once so far, which is kind of a shame actually. I definitely want to use it more to get to know it, but one time I used it, I did really enjoy it. I'm excited to use it more. The color story is super pretty. I did use this yellow and it was a bit chalky initially, but it did build up fine. So the shimmer is just okay. I knew that their shimmer formula isn't like the best shimmer formula, but their mattes are really good and I love a good matte. So I really enjoyed this palette. Next is my Rust palette from Melt. I also got this on their Black Friday sale. This one I've only used once as well, but I did really enjoy it. I'm excited to use my Melt palettes more. I feel like this is a really good neutral palette for me. I think this will be like my go-to kind of like neutral palette because I got just like a really pretty neutral kind of sultry look out of it. So I'm super excited to have this palette. And then I have the Gemini palette. I got this during the 40% off sale that they were having. I got this after Black Friday. They continue to have a 40% off sale. I haven't used it yet. I'm super excited to have it though. And then this arrived the same day, like serendipitously, the same day in my mailbox from my friend Christine Ann on YouTube. And she offered to send this to me, so I gladly accepted. So I'm super excited about both of these palettes, to have both of these palettes, and I still haven't tried them yet. But yeah, so those are all the palettes I have from Melt. Next I have this Nomad Berlin Underground palette. This was sent to me by Liz, Elizabeth Osborne, I think is her YouTube channel name. And then she was my friend on Instagram before then. Her handle is She Loves a Sparkle. But anyway, this is what the inside of the Nomad Berlin palette looks like. There's just one matte, but the matte performs super well. It's pigmented, but also blends out super easy. So I'm really happy about this matte. And then these shimmers, there's like satin shades in here as well, and some shimmers, and then there's this black, which is like a sequin matte black. But I do really like this palette. I really like the shimmer shades. I'm just super excited to have this one. So thank you again, Liz. And then she also sent me the Modern Renaissance. She was doing a declutter, so these are palettes that she decluttered. And I actually think that these can pair really well together, so I'll probably be using these together because this has like all the mattes that this one's missing. I actually had this palette before, but I gave it to my sister-in-law because she didn't like have very much makeup, and I felt like she would enjoy this palette more than I would, and I was excited to pass this palette on to her, the Modern Renaissance. But then I kind of missed it because it is a really good neutral palette. I'm a big fan of the ABH formula. But anyway, now I have it back in my life, so I'm pretty excited about that. And I'm super excited to have this Nomad palette. It's my first palette I've tried from Nomad, and I definitely want to try more. So yeah, thank you again, Liz, for these palettes. I'll just go ahead and stick with ABH. So this is the Jackie Aina palette. This is one of my favorite palettes in my collection. It's like top 3 favorite palettes. Definitely keeping this. This is one I don't know if I'll ever declutter. I just love it so much. So yeah, that's that one. Next I have the ABH, the Anastasia Beverly Hills Riviera palette. This was sent to me by my friend Misty, and she sent me some makeup that she was decluttering. So I'm super thankful for that, and I'm just so thankful and appreciative of all of my generous friends here in this community that have sent me eyeshadow palettes and just makeup in general. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. But she did say I can pass on anything that I don't want. And so I will be decluttering a couple of the palettes that she sent. And I'm okay with that because she was decluttering them and I got to try them and figure out kind of more of what I like and don't like. So anyway, this palette though, the color story is, it just doesn't makes sense in my brain to put together looks with this palette. Although I have seen some really pretty looks that other people have put together with this palette. Like Patty Alonso has done some really pretty looks with this palette. And just on Pinterest, there's just a lot of looks with this palette. For me, I just don't want to have a palette where I'm constantly having to copy somebody else's looks that they've done, because I post my looks on Instagram and I do like replicate some looks from like my friends and stuff, but I don't want to have a palette where like every look I do is replicated. I have come up with my own look where I did like I layered this shade. I did like a halo eye with this shade and the pink and I think this blue or this blue, and it was pretty. I just feel like somebody else could enjoy this palette more. The performance was really good, I found. And yeah, and I saw, like, I was debating about this palette for a little while because I saw Jen Love's reviews talk about this palette, and she was saying like how this color story is like so easy and all these colors work well together, and she couldn't think of a combination that wouldn't work. And I was like, what am I missing? I've been talking about this palette for a long time, but anyway, I'm going to pass this on. Okay, next I have the ABH Norvina. This was also sent to me from Misty, and I think this is expired. So I don't know how old it is, and Misty got it from Poshmark or Mercari, I think. So yeah, I don't know how old it is, but it's very like reminiscent of other palettes that I've had that were expired. Like I had my Urban Decay Naked palette for an embarrassing amount of time, I think like 12 years. I didn't think about makeup expiring when I had it that long, but it's like the mattes have this almost get like thick and super patchy. I don't know if every formula gets like that when it's expired, but these mattes were doing that, where it's like they just get thick and like cling in areas and are just super patchy. And then the shimmers don't last long on the eyelids, and there's just not like a lot of, they're not like, they're pretty in swatches, but then also very lackluster when like this pink is very crumbly. It's just not like other ABH palettes that because I've tried 4 ABH palettes other than this one. I haven't tried the Subculture, but the other 4, the formula is like solid and it lasts all day, and the shimmers aren't crumbly and they're vibrant, and the mattes blend super well. So I have a feeling this is expired, and because of that, I don't want to pass it on, because I don't want to pass on expired makeup to somebody. But my husband is super excited to use this for paint, so it will be put to good use, just not on the eyeballs. But it is very pretty. It's a very pretty color story, and I'm thankful to Misty for sending this to me. And I hope you're not upset, Misty, if you're seeing this, but it's still gonna get used, just not how it's intended to be used. But anyway, that's that one. Okay, so this is another palette that Misty sent to me. This one is the one that she like offered to send me right away, like when she got the Odin's Eye mystery box, and she didn't think that she would use this palette, so she sent this to me, or she offered it to me, and I said yes, of course, because I really like the Odin's Eye formula. Well, I had tried the Hello palette for the first time. That was my first time trying Odin's Eye, and I was just in love with that formula. So because I had commented on one of her videos about how much I love the Odin's Eye formula, she offered to send this to me, and I already kind of like busted that shade, but it still works. I'm kind of a klutz, and I have tile floors, so it doesn't really work well for my eyeshadows, so that kind of sucks. But this is like a really nice formula, and I have enjoyed the looks that I've done with this palette. I really like these shimmer shades, these matte shades. Like the formula on this I feel like is really good, so I'm really happy to have this palette. And it's one I don't think I'll ever get rid of. I'll keep it when it expires for like keepsake type thing. So anyway, I'm definitely keeping this one. This is another palette that Misty sent to me. We're getting close. I think there's one more palette that she sent to me after this one. But yeah, she was decluttering some palettes. So she did kind of a big declutter, and so I got a lot of the things that she decluttered, which I'm again very grateful for, Misty. So thank you again. Let me see. I really like the color story of this palette, but it's a bit repetitive or redundant because I just feel like these shimmers are really similar, but I love the packaging of this and the formula of the shimmers. They work well with a brush, which I appreciate. This one though, you do have to use your finger to apply it, and it's leaking a bit of oil, I think. So that's kind of a bummer, but the matte formula is okay. It's not my favorite matte formula, but it's still workable, although this yellow is not good. It's really chalky. But yeah, I'm gonna keep this one. This is the Odin's Eye and Angelic Unique Fist, the Hello palette. This is one that I'm pretty sure I'm gonna keep around forever, I guess, like unless it grows mold or something like that. Hopefully that doesn't happen. That's never happened to me, but I've heard that that happens sometimes. So anyway, this is a color story. I'm pretty sure that this is still my favorite palette in my collection. Just these, like, the shade is a really pretty multi-chrome. The shade River is super pretty. I love the color story of this palette. The mattes work really well. The shimmers work really well. They apply well with a brush. I've never had them crease or anything. The formula is fantastic. It's definitely my favorite formula of everything in my collection, so I'm definitely keeping this one. Okay, and I have a Revolution palette, the Revolution Chilled palette. This was also sent to me by Misty. This is the only palette I've tried from Revolution, and I don't think I'll be trying out any more palettes from them. This isn't my preferred kind of formula. I just had a hard time getting these shadows to like show up, and the shimmers were okay. And the mattes, like, I wasn't a fan of. So I will be decluttering this one, but I'm glad I got to try Revolution. It's just not one I'm a fan of. So yeah, I'm passing this along. Next is my Sydney Grace and Mel Thompson Tiny Marbles palette. This one I'm keeping, of course. The formula on the mattes is really good. I really enjoy the formula on the mattes. The shimmers are good, except these are ones that if I don't double prime my eyes and use a glitter primer, they fade. I mean, I had tried, like using a glitter primer, not using a glitter primer, using an eye primer, not using an eye primer. I tried so many things before I discovered double priming my eyelids, which I got that idea from Floating in Dreams. She does that. She was talking about that on her channel. And so that's a really good idea, is just to like double prime your eyelids with 2 different primers. But anyway, I had tried all these different methods of applying this, but these shimmers would fade and look awful. And yeah, it was not a good look when they were fading. But now that I double prime my eyes and everything, they work. But yeah, I don't know what it was with my eyelids and these shimmers, but it wasn't good. But I'm really thankful that I've got these to work, because these shimmers are really pretty and they're very impactful, and it's just a really pretty palette. So I'm really glad that I got it to work, and I really enjoy using this palette now. So keeping. Next I have the Nomad by Juvia's Place. This is my only one of Juvia's Place palettes that I have. I had one more. I had the Masquerade Mini by Juvia's Place, and I decluttered that because I don't like the matte formula of Juvia's Place. I find them really dry and hard to blend out. So I'm very picky about my mattes. I like a good matte, but I really like this color story, so I kept this palette because of the color story, and I could make it work. It just took a lot of effort for me, and I really like this shimmer, but I'm going to be decluttering this because I realized, like, after I got my Melt 420 palette, that actually they're really similar. I can get similar looks with this palette that I can with this one. This yellow is really similar to this yellow. This orange is really similar to this. Like, I had swatched them out, and I just feel like I don't need both of these palettes, and I'd rather have my Melt one. So I'm gonna pass along the Juvia's Place and keep my Melt palette. Okay, next I have my Venice Fling palette from Bailey Sarian and Estate Cosmetics. This was sent to me from Silver Lining Makeup on Instagram. I had commented on one of my friends' posts who had posted this palette, and I mentioned, like, oh, I was kind of bummed I missed out on that palette. And then Jamie from Silver Lining Makeup messaged me on Instagram and asked me if I wanted this because she had it and she wasn't using it. And I just thought that was so sweet. So yeah, I'm just very appreciative of that. I really enjoy this palette, actually. The formula I feel like is really good. I do really like the matte formula in this palette. This is, like, also a pretty versatile palette because, like, I feel like this works pretty well as a bronzer. This also works well as a bronzer. These two you can use as blushes. The shimmer shade is super pretty. It's like this wet kind of looking shimmer. I really like this palette, so thank you again, Jamie, for sending this to me. Okay, next let's do my BH palettes. I have the three palettes from the brunch collection, which I'm keeping all three. I have the Blueberry Muffin. I really like this palette. The shimmer formula is the formula of BH is so good. It's one of my favorite formulas, probably like my second favorite to Odin's Eye. But yeah, really good formula. The Avocado Toast palette. And the Mimosa palette, which I'm pretty sure is my favorite of the brunch collection. I just really love the shimmers in this palette, just the color story of this palette. I really enjoy this palette, so yeah. So next I have three palettes from the travel series. I have the Hangin' in Hawaii, which I just got during Black Friday. I have the Passion in Paris, and I have the Lost in Los Angeles. I got this because I wanted to have three travel palettes and three of the brunch palettes. So I wanted to get this, and I thought it was somewhat neutral from the pictures, but then I got it in person and it's super neutral, and I just don't see myself using this palette. So I think I'm getting enough use out of this palette, because they're very similar with the tones of brown, and they almost look like the same shades. I haven't used this, and I'm going to pass this along to one of my sisters-in-law. I think that one of them could get a lot of use out of this, and I know, like, the formula is really good. I have swatched it because I was like, wait, I thought these were the same. I thought maybe I got like a palette that was, you know how some palettes come with like two of the same shades and it's a glitch or something, but I thought this was one of those situations. But then I looked online more closely, and yeah, there's very slight differences in these shades. So they are very pretty. It's a very pretty palette, but I don't need it. So I'm passing this on, but I am keeping the Lost in Los Angeles and the Passion in Paris. Let's do Natasha Denona next. So I have the Mini Love palette. I'm keeping that. Keeping my Natasha Denona palettes. I have the Love palette, which this is a bummer because I haven't used it that much since this happened, but I dropped this palette and this shade, and this shade Shattered. And I mixed shades together like Franken shadows to work in these spots, but They're not as good as the original Natasha Denona shades, but I'm still keeping this palette. It was like one of my favorite palettes, which it's a bummer because I don't like these shades as much, but I still really enjoy this palette, so I'm keeping it, but I'm still bummed about those shades breaking. And then the Sunrise palette. And then let's do ColourPop next. So I have this Wine and Lonely palette that I'm gonna give to my husband for paint because I used a lot of these shades in this palette to make these shades. So yeah, and then these two are other Franken shades that I made, and I just don't have a use for this palette, and I'm not passing this on because I don't really know who would want this palette. I'm not good at like Frankening shades, so these shades kind of suck. Yeah, so this is going to my husband for his paint that he's gonna make, so he'll be happy about that. So I have the Child from ColourPop, which I'm keeping that. The rest of my ColourPop are like collab palettes, which I'm keeping. I love ColourPop for their collab palettes and the packaging, so I'm keeping all of these. I have the Mandalorian, the Darth Vader, the C-3PO, it's a princess thing. This is like my most neutral palette, and it's kind of my go-to neutral palette because it's just so easy and all the colors work well and they blend easily, and so yeah, I really like this palette. It is kind of a boring color story though, but it comes in handy. I have the Tinkerbell, the Witching Hour. This shade broke in mine, and so I put in, this isn't the original shade, but yeah, I put that in to like replace the shade that broke. Yeah. And then I have the Hocus Pocus from the Gather Round Sisters Hocus Pocus. And I really love this color story. This shade, I hit pan from using it in other shadows, so I didn't hit pan from use, but I really like the color story, and I just don't like the formula of this one. But and I took this out. This was a pressed glitter. I took the shade out, but I am going to, now that ColourPop is doing their like replacement shades, when you make an order you can get one replacement shade, and there's a shade. I used to have the Wild Child palette when I gave it to someone else, and the middle shade was a really pretty shade. It wasn't a pressed glitter, but it was almost like a pressed glitter, but it didn't like come off in chunks, and there wasn't fallout with it for me anyway. And I just really like that shade, so I'm gonna get that shade and put it in here. This isn't my favorite formula. I don't know, I may have gotten like a bad batch or something, but it's the colors are like, even these shades kind of muddy together, and then if I try to like use one of these in the outer corner, it just looks really muddy. So this isn't a palette that I use very often, but I am keeping it, and this might be like one I kind of retire or just keep and not use next time, and not include it in my inventory next time, but for now I'm gonna keep it. But that's that one. And then I have the newest Hocus Pocus palette, which is my favorite one. I really love this color story, this palette. It's such a good palette. I'm really happy with this palette, so yeah. And then I have the Star Wars palette. This is also just a standout palette from them. Love this formula, love the color story. There's some really nice shades in here, like this one, this shade, and this shade are like their Super Shock formula. Really nice. This shade is like almost like a duochrome. So yeah, this is one of my favorite palettes from them, and one of my favorite palettes like in my collection, so it's a good palette. And then last from ColourPop, I have the Harry Potter palette. This is one I got purely for collector's purposes, and I can't even get it to fit fully in frame, but I got this for collector's purposes because I love Harry Potter. The color story this is what the color story looks like. And it's not my favorite color story. I feel like it's a little bit boring, or it's just not one I feel like reaching for. And so I think I'm going to, like, the formula is fine. I used it 3 times. I used the majority of the shades, I feel like. And, like, it's fine. It's just with the other palettes I have, I just don't see myself wanting to use this one that much. And I did get it for collector's purposes, so I don't really, like, I don't want it to get messed up from use. I don't want to accidentally drop it, because I have been known to drop my palettes when I use them. So I think I'm going to just get a display stand for this and keep it on my bookshelf and not count it in my palette collection, like not count it in my inventory, and not really plan to use it, but just to keep it for, like, the collector's purposes. So yeah, I'm gonna retire this one, but it's pretty new. So but yeah, I'm gonna keep this on a display stand and not count it in my inventory. And I have this chocolate martini palette from Glam. This is the only palette I've tried from Glam, and I just got it during the Black Friday sale. And I love the color story of this palette. This is one of my favorite color stories just in my whole collection. I like the formula of the shimmers. I'm not a fan of the mattes. I find them to be a little bit too thin and difficult to blend. And I've tried them, putting them on the way Misty suggested, where you stamp them on and then blend them out instead of blending them as you go, and I kind of get the same result either way I apply it. So yeah, I'm not a fan of the mattes. I do like the shimmers though. So and I've gotten some really pretty looks with it. The last look I did, I spent the day with my husband, and he complimented my eyeshadow like 3 different times. So yeah, I'm glad I have this. I don't know if I'll be trying many more palettes from Glam, but I'm glad I have this one, and I'm keeping this one. And then finally, I have just a couple palettes from Urban Decay. This is the Naked Mini 3, and this is one my father-in-law just got me for Christmas. I thought that was super sweet, but yeah, I haven't used it yet, but that's this one. And then lastly, I have my Naked Honey palette, which I'm going to be decluttering because I have my C-3PO palette, and I'd rather keep the C-3PO palette because I did get it for the packaging, but they're really similar, like they create similar looks. And I actually did a video comparing the two. I'll link it down below in case you're interested, but I just feel like this gives similar looks, so I can't really justify keeping both. And plus, I've only used this palette 3 times, and I got it earlier this year, so I feel like it should go to a better home and make somebody else happy, because it's a really good palette, and yeah, I just don't need it. So I'm decluttering that one. Okay, so I know I said I wasn't going to be decluttering this Odin's Eye Alva palette, and I do love the packaging, but it's not one that's like special collector's packaging for me, so I don't really need to hold on to it for the packaging. But I was looking at my palettes, and I feel like the mattes in this palette, the Alva palette, are really similar to the mattes in the Glam Martini palette, chocolate martini palette. And while I do like the matte formula better in this palette, I still don't need to, like, I still don't love the mattes in here, so I'm okay using these mattes instead. And also the shimmers in this palette, I realized are actually pretty similar to the ones in my Natasha Denona Sunrise palette. Like, these shimmers, these 3 shimmers are all pretty similar, and they're kind of similar to this shade. This shade is kind of similar to this shade. I feel like this palette, the Alva palette, is kind of redundant in my collection, so I think I'm going to pass it on. It is leaking oil here, so if I can find someone who doesn't mind that, I'll happily pass it on. If I can't find anybody who wants this palette, I'll definitely keep it, There's not a bad palette. I just feel like it's a little bit redundant in my collection, and I don't really want to have too many redundancies in my collection because I want to have space to use things that I really love. So this is one it's not like a favorite palette of mine, so I'm happy to pass this on to someone who might enjoy it more than me. So yeah, I'm going to be decluttering this one also. Okay, so I just did a final count, and I started with 42 palettes. I am keeping 31 palettes. I'm retiring one, as in I'm not counting it in my inventory because I don't plan on using it. And I decluttered 9. So I'm pretty happy with that. I'm happy with the amount of palettes that I'm keeping and the amount of palettes that I'm decluttering. And I don't feel like I'm going to regret any of the palettes that I'm decluttering. So anyway, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and please subscribe if you haven't subscribed, and I will see you in the next video.